and welcome to the ShowRatings.tv Pilot Roundtable, a Southgate media podcast. My name is Kyle Tremblay, and I'm the editor-in-chief at ShowRatings.tv, a user-driven television review website. Visit us online at www.showratings.tv and follow us on Twitter at ShowRatingsTV. Tonight, we're talking about the new WGN drama, Manhattan. According to WGN's website, set against the backdrop of the mission to build the world's first atomic bomb, Manhattan follows the brilliant but flawed scientists and their families as they attempt to coexist in a world where secrets and lies infiltrate every aspect of their lives. Here to talk about Manhattan is a writer and member of the social media team for ShowRatings.tv. She's a co-host of the Orange is the New Black podcast here on Southgate Media. Megan Haas, welcome back.
Thank you.
Oh, we're here to talk about a show on WGN, a network that I barely knew existed.
Well, it didn't have any series before this in Salem, so
Yeah, well, we'll
not your fault.
I think we'll talk about Salem in a second, but
good.
We're here to talk about Manhattan. So what did you think of this premiere?
I thought it was good. I thought it wasn't horrible. I mean, it could have gone terribly wrong. You've got a premise that is essentially very boring.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sugarcoating it. It's literally a project about the building of an atomic bomb.
Yes.
Like, I mean, high school students all over the place just went, now you see why we're bored.
Right.
Like,
a premise that is a chapter in history books.
It really is, and that's all it is a chapter. There's nothing really major about this. I mean, we discovered Germany.
Historically, it's a pretty big event, I would say.
I know it is, but like not when you're like trying to flesh it out into like a big series.
Yeah, well,
it's only a couple years,
right?
So, I mean, you can go past it, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I think what you're getting at is that this is a series that is about an event as opposed to a world, which is a weird sort of modern thing. And the first thing I thought of with this series is *Halt and Catch Fire* on AMC, which is the same thing, which is a series built around a historical event that actually happened, as opposed to a period of time, like the way Mad Men is built around a period of time, or even something silly like Rain on the CW, where you're sort of taking a historical template and then telling a story within that template. This is almost a fictional documentary, creating fictional characters, but giving them a task to do that was something that real people did, which is sort of a weird modern thing in TV, I'm thinking.
It's like, I feel like they tried to do it around the 40s. They had, every filter in the world to film this show.
You told me that they loved Instagram, and I agreed with that.
I feel like they just hired Instagram to film their things, and it's not terrible, but
yeah,
people didn't look like that.
Sure.
We only think it looks like that because that's how the cameras looked back then. And
yeah. But it doesn't really capture the 40s because it's set in this tiny, out of the way, on purpose, New Mexico town, right? It's not like
it tries to.
It's not set in Manhattan, in Manhattan, New York. It's just in this sort of isolated area. So it's really just telling the story of the creation of the atomic bomb and the community that sprung up of basically scientists and their families that was responsible for this invention.
Well, they have the thing with this series is it could be a really good series, but the pilot did not break away from what we already know, or I'm assuming a good portion of the audience already knows. So they need to delve into the lives of these women that are living there, that they don't know what their husbands are doing. I mean, they hear explosions going off every now and again, but they think they're saving the lives with some tracking device. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
What do you think is happening out in your backyard?
But I mean, wouldn't you think that they would do that in subsequent episodes? I mean, the women on this episode did have plenty to do, I thought, and it seems to me like they're going to.
It was all related to the bomb.
Yes, that's
which
true.
I get. That's what the show is about, but you can't just have a show about an event like you said. You need to have a way for the audience to become attached to this show.
Yes.
If they're not going to, I'm telling you right now that only history buffs and loosely termed nerds are going to really, really like to watch a show about the making of the bomb. And if you wanted to, why not just go to the History Channel?
Yeah.
So they need to have something more, and I think they're going to try to do that in the next episode. But you needed to introduce that in the pilot.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I did find myself wandering a bit during
Yeah.
this. I really liked the opening, and you mentioned the importance of giving people an entry into this world, and our entry, the show gave us the entry in the form of Charlie, our sort of point of view character, who is a new scientist who's brought his family to this town, not knowing what to expect. Obviously, everything's a big secret, and so he is being introduced to the town as we are, which is a trick that almost every show pulls. Mad Men did
Hmm.
this, a lot of other shows do, where we're getting the tour through his eyes. But what was interesting is he's not the main character of this show. The main character is Frank, the the guy who runs the team and who's played by John Benjamin Hickey,
Hmm.
who seems to be the sort of central figure of this show. What did you think about the characters of this episode?
Well, again, I don't feel attached to anybody. I mean, this was not a bad premiere. I did not have a terrible time watching this. I did enjoy it.
Yeah.
But this main character, he's got an interesting relationship with his wife. His wife's a scientist. He's a
Yes.
scientist. His daughter wants to go to New York, but he's building a bomb, and they don't take his way. So I feel like he's going to become more interesting over time.
Sure.
But it wasn't the character's fault that he was boring this time, because he's got so many things that could make him interesting, especially this idea that his project was not accepted
Mm-hmm.
and he has the better one, even though we already know what happens, they don't know what happens.
Yes.
And he's got a few interesting things that go on in this pilot, but overall he was boring.
I liked what you mentioned, that his project wasn't accepted. He didn't save the day, which is a
Mm-mm.
way that this diverges from Mad Men, because in the Mad Men pilot, Don Draper saves the day. In this case, he doesn't save the day, but we know historically how it plays out. Did you enjoy his conversation with Robert Oppenheimer, the famous historical figure who was played with great glee by an actor who I don't know? you
I mean every interaction he had, even with his wife at the end, either felt like overdone,
mhm.
or not with the acting, with the writing. It felt like this character was over dramatic or not dramatic enough, or just frustrated. And I'm like, this dude's having a horrible day.
Yeah,
But it's
he
not.
was struggling.
He was struggling a lot, but after a while, I didn't care. There was like, okay, you're just a struggle, so you do what you do, and go in the corner and do that, because
Yeah.
it's just not going to be fun for you.
But I think that that's the dynamic that they're setting up with his wife, which is that
Yes.
his wife is tethering him to the world, and she's his sort of only
Yeah.
lifeline. And so, I mean, that's potentially interesting.
It's interesting, but at the very end, she walked out and she explained, after he realizes that his project's not going to be taken, his wife walks out and is basically explaining about these orchids
Yes.
who they need each other. There's two orchids that come in
Yeah.
pairs and they need each other to
Mm.
survive. And he's explaining it, or she's explaining it, and then she goes, "We're like those orchids." I'm like, he's not dying. Like, he just had a really bad day
Yeah,
at work.
I think I think that probably could have been edited out in a draft at some point. I'm not sure we needed the
But
extended
these
orchids
poor actors,
metaphor.
I know these poor actors, I think they were trying to flush out her
Sure.
scientific background, but
Oh
these
yeah.
poor actors did it very well. But let's save the orchid metaphor for when we just bomb Japan with no looking
Well,
back.
that'll be when the series
Save,
ends, though. I mean, that's
yeah,
like
but we could
four
have
seasons
saved
down
the
the road.
orchid metaphor for another
Yeah.
moment like that.
We don't have to unveil it in episode one. We can
Exactly.
save some ammo. Um. So I have a take on who this show is for, because you mentioned earlier for nerds and history buffs.
It's for the Downton Abbey crowd,
Yeah, I feel
but
like this. I
minus the Gossip Girl aspect
Yes.
of Downton
Well,
Abbey.
Downton Abbey has exactly what you said. Has a sort of soap opera element to it.
Yeah.
This doesn't, at least so
No.
far. This is very historical
This
feeling.
tries to. This
A
tries
little
to
bit.
a couple different
The
times.
gossiping
So
women.
it could be in a future that this becomes. I feel like if this show was more balanced between sections about the bomb and sections about the life, it would be more successful. It needs to really delve into this relationship of everybody living in this community that happened to be working on a bomb. That's the turn it needs to take. And
I think that might be this show, though. I think that a lot of this pilot was just establishing the parameters of the world.
and I it's so boring. You don't have a good pilot when you're not when if it's just establishing
Right.
things and it's just backgrounds, you're going to lose your audience.
Yeah.
Hopefully people saw the filters and were like nostalgic 40s
Well,
and they're going to watch it.
this did put up a good number for WG, and it had almost 2 million viewers, which is good for that network. It'll be interesting how much they retain, because I think that's what you're getting at, is that a lot of people who maybe tuned in for this first episode might have been bored and not
Well, they
checked
also
for
didn't they
subs-
also didn't promote it very well either.
I saw a
I
lot online. I don't think anyone
I you
actually
didn't
watches WGN.
No, I didn't see any promotion for this show. And
Yeah.
suddenly people were like, Manhattan's premiering tonight. I'm like, what in the world is Manhattan?
About 10 minutes into watching it, you messaged me and asked, "Is this show about the Manhattan Project?"
Yes, I was
Which
like,
is
I have
funny.
no idea what I'm watching.
I
And it was
accept it.
like 1943. I'm like, okay, we're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
This guy's playing golf in a dust storm, and it's called Manhattan. And then everybody was like, Hitler's got this bomb. I'm like, oh,
You pieced it all
okay,
together.
Manhattan Project. This is a boring concept, but we'll go and see what happens.
Well, what I was gonna say is I feel like the audience for this show is old people. I feel like this is a show for
Don't sugarcoat that
no.
either.
I'm just saying it right now. I feel like this is a show for the killing crowd,
Yeah.
which was notoriously one of the oldest audiences of any show on television. Where it's I mean, not even like because like modern nerds are watching shows like The Walking Dead. You know, like what we
Yeah.
think of a nerd are watching comic book shows and things that have
That's a geek.
yeah, well, okay, semantics. But you know, this is I feel like this is a show for the elder crowd where the pacing is very deliberate. The characters are being sort of painstakingly drawn. They're not, you know, big and broad comic book characters, and the focus is very narrow, the same way that the focus of The Killing is very narrow. And so I feel like this is a cross between The Killing and *Halt and Catch Fire* as a show. Do you have any comparisons for it?
No, because there's a show about the Manhattan Project.
Yeah, it is
I
pretty narrow.
mean, if you look at WGN, correct me if I'm wrong. I think they only have this in Salem.
So far.
Salem is very much a younger show.
Oh yes.
That is so for teenagers and younger audiences.
It's True
So
Blood. It's a True Blood
it's
type.
not even True Blood. It's like if True Blood was on MTV.
Hemlock Grove. Is it
I don't
Hemlock Grove?
even know. It's just I watched that show. I'm like nothing makes
Yes.
sense.
So it's Hemlock Grove.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Right.
but it has an audience and it's pretty entertaining. It's very Gossip Girl with witches. It's very much like that.
Right.
So if that show can get that audience and this show can get their older audience, maybe that was intentional. But if they want this show to get both audiences, it needs to stick with what it's doing, but get a lot of more relationship drama. And I'm not talking about like you slept with one of the computers and the computers are the girls. So like that can't be the drama. It needs to be more like the fact that no man can tell their wife about what they're doing, and the fact that Charlie points out, like, you're trying to make a bomb that's going to have a really wide burn ratio,
Mhm.
and the things he says like that. So if that gets fleshed out and everything else gets fleshed out, then yes, it could have two audiences.
Yeah, I think this is deliberately targeting a different audience so that
Yes.
WGN doesn't pigeonhole itself as a sort of pulpy network, because this is not pulp. This is historical. This is very down to earth, deliberate.
Dry. It's very dry.
Very. You're right.
history.
Yes, very dry. I feel like they were going for a big laugh line when they revealed that the quote unquote computers are the attractive girls. Like that was
Yeah.
that was their big laugh of the episode. So that kind of gives you a sense of how dry this is.
And like
Yeah.
I was just sitting here like, oh man.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
called computers, man.
All right.
And then they like are bribed with pantyhose. I was like, oh god.
Yeah. I know. Okay,
It's
so
okay. It's the
it
40s.
is the 40s. Okay, so Meg, final verdict: thumbs up or thumbs down for Manhattan?
Um. Oh man, I don't know.
It's a tough one.
It's a tough one because I enjoyed watching it. I just need to be awake to watch it. I can't be ready to go to bed and watch this show. So I'm kind of like thumbs in the middle
Thumbs
because
middle.
I need to see the next two episodes to see
Yeah.
if they're sticking with this dry. As of right now, if the show continues exactly what it's doing, which I highly doubt it will based on the preview, it's a thumbs down for me personally. Um,
Are you going to watch the next two episodes?
yes.
Okay. I think that to me that constitutes a thumbs up. I think
Okay.
if the pilot's enough to get you in for 3 episodes, I think, at least in my mind, and this is very unscientific, but I feel like that is enough of a thumbs up. And that's my logic as well. That I'm gonna watch the next episode, see how it looks, see if anything really hooks me. I enjoyed this pilot. I suspect a little bit more than you, but at the same time, I am not engrossed by it. I'm not.
That's a good way to describe
Yeah.
it. I enjoyed it, but I was not engrossed. I didn't mean
Yes.
to. I don't want to say that this show is a disaster because it's actually better than a good portion of
It is.
pilots that have premiered in the past year or two.
Yeah.
But it wasn't something that I watched it and was like, oh my goodness, I need to see the next episode. It didn't do that at all.
Exactly. So, all right, Meg. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. How can people keep up with you?
I am on Twitter at MEGGH11, and that's basically where you can find me and get to my other sites, including show ratings.
And you, speaking of show ratings, you run the show ratings Tumblr. How do people find
I
it there?
do. Showratingstv.tumblr.com. I run it. You can talk to me. You can
Yeah.
reblog everything and tell your friends to follow.
Do all of those things.
All of those things.
All right, so that concludes this episode of the ShowRatings.tv Pilot Roundtable. We invite you to check out this and other Southgate Media Group podcasts at southgatemediagroup.com and to read about, rate, and discuss all your favorite shows at ShowRatings.tv. You can follow me on Twitter at KyleLovesTV, Meg at MEGGH11, and Show Ratings at ShowRatingsTV. Until next time, this has been Kyle Tremblay. Thanks for listening.